Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out and get, these amazing messages to other people. So I'm excited for our guest today. He's a fellow RTA member, a good friend. He gave me a ride to the airport like 5 a.m. last time, which means a lot to me. And so welcome to the show, Roy Edwards. Excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited about this, so thank you for that. And of course, I'll give you a ride at any time. You know that.
I love it.
Any time of the day.
I love it. So a little bit about Roy that I know, and then we'll just let him tell more of his story. Him and his wife run a Microsoft consultant company. They started really in 2016. They're by Washington, D.C., and so they work with the federal government. That's why we're going into military, that kind of stuff. Let's go into that. Like, what got you into that field? What got you into starting your own business? Where did you come from? Let's just go into your story.
Yeah. So why we started our own business and why we do what we do are kind of different. But so thanks for that introduction. Yeah, I'm in DC. I was born and raised in Washington, DC. My parents are from DC. Like, there's a very I don't know how the perception of Washington, DC is around the rest of the world, but here in DC, like when you're actually here in the area, it's a very fluid environment. So every 4 years, as you might imagine, with the presidential election, the city turns over. So if it's a Democrat in power, it's mostly Democrats. If it's a Republican party, it's mostly Republicans. So it's constantly changing over. So for those of us who are actually from here, we like to joke that it's a small town, even though it's most certainly not. But we like to joke that it's a small town. So I was born here, raised here. So when people always ask us, like, why do we do business with the federal government? It's just, that's what you do here. So our entire local economy is built around the federal government. So if you're not working with or for the federal government, there's not a whole lot to do here. That's just the nature of the town and nature of the beast. So my father was in cloud computing. He worked for a bunch of large enterprise organizations that I could name drop and you'd know all of them. And he sold cloud storage and supercomputers. Wow. So he sold to like SIPR networks, which is like secret networks for like the Pentagon, Department of Defense, and basically all those supercomputers that are processing all your data. He had a large part in selling that to the military. So that was like dinner time talk, was like supercomputers and artificial intelligence and cloud computing and hybrid networks and all that other fun stuff. So I grew up a nerd. That was the belly of the beast. But when I was growing up, like the idea, it was like you were going to be a salesman if you wanted to be in that area. Like the whole web development, the internet was relatively new, so people didn't really understand the power of the internet at that point. So this idea that if you wanted to be in computing or you wanted to be in that industry, then you either had to be somebody who like worked in the area and worked on the servers, or you were a salesman. And I didn't want to do either of those. So, I got into like the creative side. I was doing graphic design, web design. I went into radio for a little bit. I worked for Sirius XM. So it was like, I had this like weird mesh of a background and upbringing. I was teaching high school courses in high school before going to college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, like most people, I feel like. And then out of college, my wife and I, we both worked for the federal government. Like I said, if you're from here, then that's just kind of the natural path. A lot of your relatives will push you that way because it's like the safe way. The benefits are good, Oh, but you can retire. That's what we were always told, right? So that was what I did. And my wife and I, we both worked there. And while doing that, we worked for the Office of Generic Drugs under the Obama administration. So that was when, for those of the Americans out there, that was when the Affordable Care Act, or also known as Obamacare, was put in place.
Yep.
Which has a lot to do with generics. So we were just kind of in the right place at the right time. And while doing that, expanded from like a 150 person to like a 300, then a 400, then a 600 person super agency. And we were just kind of there, right? So we saw massive scale and massive growth and the inefficiencies that come with that. and were put in positions where we had to help them scale and help them streamline processes. And we saw all the inefficiencies, and, one thing led to another. And we had a conversation, my wife and I, and we were like, you know what, let's start looking for other opportunities. And I started applying to, the understanding was that I would leave first and that she would stay because it was safe.
Right.
And so I put out 2 different applications. I was like, well, I'm pretty good at this development process stuff. I'll put out apps, for that. And then, I really wanted to be on the radio. So maybe I'll give it one more shot. I had to own my own streaming company and, did that thing, and it was doing okay, but I never really went all in on it. And I was like, you know what? I'll start applying to radio jobs. And I got both positions. So like they both called me back. So it was a consulting company that serviced the VA, the Veteran Affairs. They gave me a job, and so did SiriusXM. So I was working 2 jobs, and then I was like, you know what, Hale, like, I think I can do this 2-job thing. Why don't we just have you come home? So she came home and did the whole stay-at-home mom for a little while, and she was pregnant. And I was like, let's just do it. Let's just wing it. So she came home, and that was like the beginning of starting the business. So she had just retired from the federal government. She was pregnant, gave up our health insurance. I was also sick. So I had this, like, every time I tell this story, it just doesn't seem like real that we did this, but I had surgery. So I have Crohn's disease, and I was in the hospital. I had 1.5 feet of my intestines removed, and it's called an ileostomy is the procedure that I had. And I was in the hospital, and I was working for, like I said, this other company, and I needed to take leave because I was laying in a hospital bed. Obviously, this was not like, I didn't think that I was going to have to do this. This wasn't like pre-planned leave or anything like that, right?
Right.
So my boss at the time didn't really like the idea that I was in the hospital, and he was kind of asking for proof. So I had to like send him pictures and stuff like that, which I still have the pictures on my phone. And that was kind of like the straw that broke the, camel's back, so to speak. Right. So my wife and I, we were like, let's do it. Let's go all in. She, like I said, she was pregnant, left the government to start this business. And then I was in a hospital bed. We filed LLC April 19th of 2016, and never looked back. And it was a pretty crazy ride. But we figured it out along the way, and here we are, still alive. So that's always good.
The short and form. I love
That's
it. Right. So tell us a little bit of the things that you overcame to start to build your company. I mean, going in full time, you had a baby on the way. That's kind of crazy. You also had health challenges that you were dealing with, obviously. So some things that a lot of people would honestly take them out of a lot of things. You decided to try something new in that. Where did that mindset come from? And how do you think someone can develop that?
Yeah, man. I don't know where the mindset came from, to be honest with you. I mean, I grew up playing sports. My dad was an athlete. He played pretty high level collegiate football. He played for the University of Mississippi, or Ole Miss is what it's called. So he was a D1 athlete, and always instilled that on my brothers and I. So, I joke that I grew up a nerd, but I was kind of like a closet nerd. Like we played sports year round. I was like, we had a rule that you had to be playing sports. So sports definitely played a large role in my life. And my grandfather was military. So I grew up, while my father was not necessarily military, I grew up in a military home without the travel, like everything was very strict. It was very regimented, mind your manners. Children are to be seen and not heard. It was very like, very strict. So I attribute a lot of that upbringing to just kind of head down, work hard, you'll figure it out. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He owned a business, and that was always a big part of our family. That was always talked about, that he owned a business. So that all kind of played a role. My wife also comes from a family of entrepreneurs. So her grandfather, also military, her entire family on both sides are entrepreneurs. Her dad's an entrepreneur, grandfather on both sides are entrepreneurs. So, you know, a lot of people, I feel like when they're starting out, maybe their family doesn't have the perspective of entrepreneurship. Whereas we were the opposite. We were kind of blessed. Like it was always an option, you know? Hey, you could always do this. This is always something you could do. We grew up with that. My brother is also an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur. Yeah, so it was always a part of us. It was always encouraged. So I never really had that like doubt that I could do it. It was more so like, are you going to do it? You know?
Right.
It was like, hey, you could do this if you wanted. So yeah, that was always part of it. And then, I hate to bring up that. I mean, like everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something they've overcome. And I hate to always bring up that, like, this is why I hate telling my stories, because I always have to bring up Crohn's disease. And like, that is such an old part of me at this point in my life that I don't really like to bring it up. But I was diagnosed at age 12. So there was some like ways that I just had to deal with things thrown at you from a young age. It was like, you're going to figure it out. It's not the end of the world. You're not dying. You'll be fine. Right. So I've carried that throughout my entire life. Like if something happens to me, I have this like way of dealing with it through humor. So I try to find the humor and everything. And I do attribute that to getting Crohn's disease at a young age, where it was just like something serious comes your way and, well, I'm just going to joke about it because I don't know how else to deal with it. So whenever we were dealing with, my wife being pregnant and leaving, which our daughter was ultimately born and I didn't have health insurance. So that was fun. But it was just like, we'll figure it out, like we're not going to die. So like, we'll figure it out. And we have a great support system in both of our sides of the family.
That's cool. And
it's been, I don't know how you would develop it other than going through shit, like you're just going to have to figure it out. Like if you don't, you don't know what you can do unless you try. So if you want to see if that's what you have or that's what you're made of, or then just go do hard stuff. And you'll find out pretty quickly if you can deal with it or not.
I agree. One of my friends, Steve Holbrook, he has Crohn's also. And he just did a post yesterday, actually reposted it. And I thought it was so good. He's like, hey, you want to know how to build mental toughness? And he's like, I'm blessed every day. I get to go through Crohn's disease. And so I get to test my mental toughness every day of my life. And I was like, yeah, I feel the same way. Like, but hopefully not everyone has to go through something like that. Right. Like, I don't want to wish my MS or your Crohn's or whatever. I don't want to wish it on anybody. But it definitely, I agree with that. It definitely does build. It can build you into a stronger person. Let's go with that, because it does not. It
certainly can. It can break you, and I've seen it break people.
Yes.
As well, but. But that kind of comes back to your support system. If you have good people around you, and you're feeding yourself good things, there's that, what is it? The old, there's a good wolf and a bad wolf inside of all of us. And whichever one wins is the one you feed it. Like, I totally believe that. Like, we all have two different things inside of our body, inside of our mind, that are constantly fighting for our attention. I'm a religious person. I believe that it is God and Satan that are constantly trying to divide us. And, if you give in to Satan, then you're going to have a really hard time in this world. And if you pray and you meditate on God's word, and you believe that you're here for a higher purpose and that these are tests and trials of the enemy, then I think that you'll be just fine.
I agree.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So what are some, you mentioned, what you put in and your associations and stuff like that. You said you were blessed with a family. Not everyone is blessed with a family that's super supportive. That's for sure. I know lots that aren't. What are some tips that you would give someone? You've been in this entrepreneur space for a while. You've seen a lot of people obviously come and go in different industries within it. What are some tips that would give, like, say, an aspiring entrepreneur, to build associations, or to build what they mentally, think about, like that kind of thing? What are some things that you think would help?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different takes on this, right? So I can only speak to my experience and what worked for me. And maybe it'll work for you. The way that I built my business was I tried and failed a lot. So Capital Presence, our current business, is not the first business we tried. We tried a lot of other businesses, and those businesses all failed. But through those trials and tribulations, I gained a very specific set of skills, and that ultimately led us to building what it is that we have today. So I did not think that my love, was going to be cloud computing and robotic process automation and building, essentially, automation of people's document routing systems. Like that doesn't get me up in the morning, you know?
What gets you up in the morning?
God, faith, family. Those are the things that really get me up. I believe that, I have it on my phone that every time I go to my car door, my Bluetooth, every time at 10:10 every morning, it says you are called to build passion, purpose, and peace. So I believe that that's why I'm here, is to build passions and purpose in my children and those around me, and to be a provider of peace. And peace can mean a multitude of things. It could be mental peace. It could be peace of the enemy. It could be peace of mind. It could be a multitude of things. But I believe that that's why I was blessed with the children that I have and the family that I have and the circle that I have, is to help those be supportive of what their passion is, and to help them build their purpose in the same way that my circle helped me. And so to someone starting out, try as much as you can and know that you're going to fail, and that's okay. And you're going to build skills out of it. And then, a lot of people will tell you to go all in. I didn't do that in the beginning. I had held multiple jobs. So I held like 2 or 3 jobs. I was working 7 days a week. I missed family events. I missed New Year's. I sacrificed, and a lot of people thought I was crazy at the time, but like, that's part of the journey too, is you're not going to have overnight success. Mm-hmm. I like to say that you're going to eat shit for the first 18 months, like, just to get people ready to know that it's going to be really difficult for a year and a half, maybe a little bit longer. But, in the long run, here we are 7 years in, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'd do it all over again. I know a lot of people, my brother included, which my brother, he's built a much more successful business than I have. They're, eight-figure business. And he would say he would never do it again. So, I think that it does take a toll out of you. And so that entrepreneurship is hard. And I feel like that it's been glorified through social. And so a lot of people want to do it, and that's totally cool. I think it's a viable option for a lot of people, but you just have to be real with yourself to know that it's going to be hard and to stick with it. You can do it.
Anyone can.
Yeah, anyone can do it. It's not rocket science. It's more so as, are you going to quit before it pays off?
And if someone's listening to this, because I'm just thinking of some people, and they're listening to this and they say like, well, so you were working 7 days a week, and, people saying like you were crazy. What are you doing? How did you deal with some of that negativity, quote unquote, or people just trying to be helpful? That's how I normally view it. Looking after our well-being and being like, hey man, don't want to burn yourself out and stuff like that. How did you, how did you handle those situations? Did you distance yourself? Did you say, man, like, shut up? Like, how did you deal with that stuff? Because that takes a drain on you, which just adds to the drain of like working all the time. And then you have people that are negative. Man, it definitely doesn't make life easier.
Yeah. I mean, prayer. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't see your vision or wants to protect you, to your point. Mm-hmm. My parents included. I have a great support system with my family, but at the same time, there were certain things that they didn't want me to do. They didn't think it was wise for me to resign from the government. They didn't think it was wise to, quit a 6-figure job to go eat shit for 18 months to start a business, because I thought it would be, fun or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, right. But they're coming from a place of love. Like they wanted to protect me. We had 2 kids and a pregnant wife. Roy, this is probably not the smart thing to do. And they're just trying to protect their son and their grandchildren. So there has to be like kind of a side to say, okay, well, is this really like, am I doing this for me? Am I doing it for my family? Like, why am I really doing this? What's the end goal? Am I just doing it because like it's the cool thing to do?
Ego.
Right. Is this an ego driven thing? That's where there's a lot of prayer involved. Just say, you know, God, if this is really what you want me to be doing, then open the door. Because he will, you know, like you'll find some things in entrepreneurship world that don't make any sense. Like, why did that, like, how did that work? That there's no way that I would have been able to do that, or that door would have been open, or that detour would have happened without some intervention. So I believe that prayer, you know, when you do get that pushback, because it's going to happen, whether it's your wife, girlfriend, friends, parents, or yourself, it's going to happen. So you just have to pray about it, because it might not be the right decision, and that's okay too. But you have to make sure that the decisions that you are making, the detours that you are taking, are, you know, for the benefit and the good, not for an ego or trying to show somebody that you're strong or something, you know?
Right. Well, that's amazing. And so you've been building a business, changing gears a little bit. You've been building a business with your spouse, spouses in business and in life. What are some tips for some couples that are listening to this that, you know, have you know, enabled you guys to do both? Yeah. You know, obviously you have a family and you're building a business together, and you haven't killed each other or separated. So what are some tips that you would say if someone's like, yeah, I want to be in business with my spouse? That sounds amazing. What are some tips that help, you know, keep the family and the business going?
Yeah. So like we get that question a lot, right? Like, what's it like going into business with your spouse? And I honestly, when it's, and we homeschool too, by the way. So
Right.
like we're like together all the time. Like we're never apart, right? I work from home. Like I'm in my basement right now. We had the studios in my basement. So my children and my wife are literally above my head right now.
Right.
So like we're always together. And so like, you know, I guess from somebody an outsider's perspective, it seems like how can you get along? Like how are you not at each other's throats? How are you not fighting? You know, how do you deal with this? But like you hear so many people that are like, I want to go into business with my best friend, you know? And how many businesses do you know of people that are owned by their best friends? Like Andy Frisella, for instance, right? He owns First Form and all of his businesses with his best friend from high school, right? Well, I trust my wife a lot more than I trust my best friend. I know that our core values align on everything. I know that no one in this world has my best interest at heart more so than my spouse. So it's a natural fit. Now, do we argue and have we gone at each other's throats sometimes? Yeah. And you do have to kind of draw a line to say this is business and this is personal. And then when you go on dates, maybe don't talk about the business and talk about, you know, like when you go on a date with your spouse, right? And you're like, hey, like, let's not talk about the kids. Let's have a time for us, right? Okay, well, you should also include like, don't talk about business on there too, right? So
I was like, what do we talk about?
yeah, right. Like,
no family, no business.
right. But yeah, like I mean, when it comes down to it, I know that she's got my back. Like, I don't have to worry about, is she doing this for like her reasons? You know, like when we started the business, there were actually 5 founding members in the beginning. So we've bought out 3 people. And those 3 people that we've bought out didn't align with our core values, had their own interests at heart. Not necessarily that those interests were bad, because I still talk with all 3 of those people and they're all great people. Like they're still friends of mine, but it's just different. Like they have their own lives. They have their own kids. They have their own purpose. They have their own travel. Like, you know, one of them was like, hey, I want to go move to San Diego. Cool. You know, which, you know, his sacrifice also helped us start the business in the beginning. So like it took a village to do this. But our paths just weren't aligned. So, you know, like I don't have to worry about that with my wife. Like she's not going to go move to San Diego, or she's not going to have to go worry about her kids that are not mine. So our interests are always the same. Our core values are the same. Our belief system, our faith, what we do is constantly aligned. So there's nothing a little communication can't fix, but you're going to have hard times in your marriage if you're not talking and you're not doing things together. So the way that I feel is the more things that we do together, it just strengthens our bond.
I love that. That's so cool. That's awesome. So, I keep these pretty short. So in wrapping up, because I have a shortest attention span, in wrapping up, I always have 3 final questions, and then anything that we didn't touch on that you just think, people really need to hear, whether it's, and you can go into it however much you want, whether it's mindset, whether it's technical, whether it's whatever you think people need to hear, we'll go into that and wrap up with that. But first, 3 final questions. First one is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find their purpose?
Pray about it. That's the biggest thing. Like, your purpose is not your own. I always think it's hilarious when people are like, I'm trying to find my purpose. Like, you can't find your purpose. Your purpose is not lost. Your purpose was given to you before birth. So it's in you. It exists. It already exists. In fact, your life has already played out and been told. It's part of this grand orchestra that you play such a small role in. That there is a grand journey that the Lord has provided, and we are blessed enough to play a role in it, albeit it might be a small role, but it is a role. And so when you are talking about finding your purpose, this idea that we have to find it, that you have to go through some like spiritual journey or something, like, just pray. That's your spiritual journey. That's the way that you find your purpose. It's already there. You were born with it. And so pray about it. Look inside you. You don't have to look anywhere else. So if you're looking for your purpose, then every single thing that you're going through, the trials and the tribulations, there's a Bible verse, I believe it's James 1, where it says, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it totally memorized, but it says that the trials and tribulations will build your endurance, making you complete. So everything that we do is meant to build our endurance. It's meant to build up our strength so that we can endure more, so that we can go do more things, so that we can ultimately live up to the reason why we were created. So, and it's to make us complete, lacking nothing, is what the scripture says. Lacking nothing. Not lacking nothing in a sense that, like, I can be like an Olympic athlete, that's not my calling, right? Or I'm not lacking nothing because, like, I have, an abundance of wealth that I'm over here, like, running Microsoft. That's not what lacking nothing means. Lacking nothing is lacking nothing in our purpose and the reason why we were created. So God knows why you're here. Pray about it and he'll tell you. And that's how you find and tap into your purpose.
Awesome. Love it. Number 2 question. Now, I'm sure there's more than one, but what comes to mind? What's a favorite quote and why?
Oh man, I have so many. When people ask me and I'm not like in a deep conversation, I'll say, it's the E.T., the hip hop preacher, where he says, if you want to succeed as bad as what you want to breathe, that's when you'll be successful. I have that one like posted a few different ways in a few different places. I have scripture tattooed on me, John 10:10, which is why my alarm goes off at 10:10 every day, reminding me about you're called to build passion, purpose, and peace. The thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. I come so you can live life and live it abundantly. I got a bunch. Carpe diem has long been like a carpe diem I have day by day tattooed on my back. I got that when I was like 18. So, I got a few. I guess if I had to pick one, it'd be scripture. The thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. I come so you can live eternal life and live it abundantly.
I love it. That's awesome. Number 3 question. What's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
I don't care. There's a guy named NF. He says, when I die, put my ashes in a trash bag. I don't care where they go. All I care about is my soul. So I don't care. The gravestones are for those of who live for this world. I'm just a visitor here. So I don't care what you put on it.
Interesting. So you run into someone in a coffee shop and they're like, hey, Roy, I'm dealing with some stuff I'm going through and it was awesome. I learned, to conquer and go through and, entrepreneurship might not be for everyone if you're ready to fail. All this stuff we just chatted about. What's something we didn't chat about that you think would be really important for our listeners to know or to hear?
Yeah. I guess if I'm going to get there's two sides of the things that I'm really passionate about talking about, right? One is like mindset and like overcoming and, working hard, the art of getting 1% better every day and innovating yourself to do that next, 2.0 or 3.0 of yourself, right? You're constantly innovating. But my ideals that follow that innovation process come from tech, right? So if you are a new entrepreneur, you're probably going and looking at all of the things that you need to acquire. Maybe you need an office, maybe you need software, maybe you need X, Y, and Z. And I would say when you go do those things, buy with what you actually need, not what you want. I made a mistake very, very early where I thought that it was like a flex to have an office. So like we went out and we got an office space in like one of the wealthiest counties in the world. And, I was right across the street from, Booz Allen and Deloitte and our competitors. And I thought that we made it, right? When really all I did was make our business, a little more strapped for cash. That was what I made, So just be careful with what you're purchasing. And the same goes for software. Like a lot of people go out and they'll look for the big shiny toy. Like they'll be like, all right, well, I need Salesforce or I need NetSuite or I need Dynamics or you don't need those things to get started. What you need to do is you need to take out a piece of paper and a pencil and write down your processes and write down how you want things to work and then fit the software and whatever it is that you're looking to acquire into those processes, not the other way around. If you go out and you buy software and you try to fit your processes to the software, you're going to fail. And you're going to have a really large bill while you're at it. So bootstrap it. There's no shame in bootstrapping. In fact, some of the largest corporations in America, you'd be surprised, are still bootstrapping it. They just want to make you believe that they have it all figured out. So, there's nothing wrong with saving a penny here and trying to figure it out the old fashioned way through pen and paper. And this is coming from a guy who builds automation and artificial intelligence for the military. Okay. So take a piece of paper out, draw some squares and circles and lines and figure out your processes before you go spend $1 on software.
That's good. I like that. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. Let's go out there. As always, like I said, share this. Let's go out there. Let's change lives. Let's change one life or one starfish at a time. If we change one life or one starfish at a time together, we can change the world. Thanks so much for being on, Roy.
Thank you. It's a blast.